Penny. We did some damage in Sand Hollow, and I don't think that's much of a surprise to anyone. But we're gonna get her in the shop, check her out, and see if there's something we can do to fix it. We've already been talking with one vendor, and we need to figure out a couple of additional things. But honestly, I think we got this. Hey, Evan, your Harry Potter wand is still in Penny from Sand Hollow. I know we're going to be talking about it soon, but there's problem number one that we need to solve before an upcoming trip. Still having problems with the bus gauges, or the bus pin down at the body. So, yeah, you can hear I'm revving her, but it sure doesn't show on the dash. Never fails to amaze me how much suspension this thing has before it actually picks up off the ground. Monster truck mode.
What about there?
Her fender's at your shoulder. Alright, so the second thing that we've got is the coilovers are going back to AccuTune, and here's why. This one looks really good. Dry, just dirt, nothing major. But the other side, it looks dry, dry, dry until you get down to there. It's leaking, so it's going back to AccuTune for rebuild.
Oh, and the nice spacers just went.
While they're working over there, one quick bit of fun. Yes, we're still running the 2003 Ram rear bump stops, but we did just install the Barnes bump pads here, and as you can see, it's hitting these suckers just square, which is really, really awesome. That way it won't try to take out my brake lines.
All right, so the spring retainer, now that the nuts are all the way down and we have some space, we have the spring retainer. It's held in with a little C-clip, and probably just need a rubber mallet to pop it down a little bit.
I'm going to suggest on the floor.
Okay.
So I'm not swinging the hammer at your face.
It's okay.
You can actually start to see that C-clip in there now.
Yeah. There it is right there. Okay. And then, yeah, it's just this little itty bitty C-clip. That's all it is. And then the retainer pops right off. The springs come off.
So it's the next day. I didn't get a chance to finish showing you everything that was wrong with Penny yesterday that was wrong from our trip to Sand Hollow, simply because we pulled those rear coils off, and by the time we were done, we wanted some dinner. So just got in from working some of the show dogs, and I wanted to continue showing you the kinds of things that we are working to fix before our next off-road outing. No, Penny is not getting Bluetooth bump stops. On the whoops along the front, the front line or front range road, she basically deposited them, and Kenna stopped and picked them up. This one happens to be in the front of Blue. So yes, that's something we're going to have to work on. And the same is also true over here, but for the bottom, not the top. The top one obviously is still there. Now, of course, something I've been having problems with is you'll notice it's tilted a bit forward. The thing is, that's a trick of the eye and is not actually tilted forward. The problem is the axle hasn't moved back, but it has never been back to factory position even since we finished phase 4. So we have been in talks with Iron Rock Off-Road to make sure our plan that we want to do is legit, and they have given it their blessing. We're going to extend the control arms by 1 inch. It'll still put us well within the safety range of the amount of metal left in at the joint back under the belly. That should go far to help solve this problem. Because you can well imagine this problem, even if the lower bump stop pad was there, you can see that all it's going to do is shove it into the spring. And that's exactly what's been happening. Because see how it's chewed off there? That's been landing. I mean, that's basically where the edge of the bump stop has been landing and just chewing the hell out of it. And sometimes I can even hear a little twing when it gets caught in the spring unloads, and the bump stop was caught within it. So, bump stops, major issue. Now, sliding the axle forward is going to help us with a second problem that arrived at Sand Hollow. Okay, and by second problem, I mean second problem related to the loss of the bump stops. Take a look here. Really nice gap. All that looks really good. It's nice and flat. Well, it's not over here. Right in through here, there's now a bulge. And that's because without the bump stop, the tire did a number on my inner fender where it came up and hit and is pushing the inner fender backwards. So a little bit of tub damage. No, I don't intend to fix this, but moving the axle forward is going to help prevent this from getting worse, prevent it maybe from happening on the other side, and in addition, help my bump stops actually function properly. And one optional thing that the boys discussed last night that the bump stops will actually help too is that I may actually be able to go to a longer shock. This is so minor. I'm happy with these shocks. They're performing really, really well. Really, the only advantage it'll give me is greater droop. So when I'm coming off of things like White Knuckle Hill, that kind of thing, it'll help the tire hit the ground a little bit better and give me 3 points of stability and not jar everything underneath. But the other thing it'll do, and this is completely minor, is I might finally be able to score higher than 990 on the Metal Cloak CTI ramp. Now, trust me, scoring 1,000 on the CTI ramp is not the goal. Never has been the goal. It's one of those fun things I'd kind of still like to do, though. But to throw a whole bunch of money to get a ½ inch more that it would take for me to get the right measurements to score 1,000, I got other priorities. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but we've got a lot of other things to work on first. This did not happen in Sand Hollow, but yeah, my windshield installer from the hail damage right before we left for Sand Hollow needs to come back out and take care of this. But since the coilovers are off, I don't know how that's going to work out, so we'll see about that. All right, last but not least, and I know it seems like a lot, but somewhere, somehow, sometime, we have no idea when. We don't know if it was at Sand Hollow or if it was in the process of installing the new front camera. My lights are no longer working. Tail lights are working just fine, but these are not working. My bumper lights aren't working. No, the bumper lights are working. The pillar lights are not. So we've got something weird going on and need to do that. Oh, compressor's working. Seat heaters are working. Boy, did I understand the seat heaters are working. I accidentally flipped it at noon on the sand in Sand Hollow. That was rump roasting that was not called for. So, yeah. Watch that. But yeah, a lot of electrical work needs to take place in addition to the return of the B0 error that has occurred that I showed you earlier in this video. That is actually a priority because, well, we're getting into the summer months, and if I don't have a temperature gauge, I don't know when I'm overheating this thing. I'm more concerned about that than I am any of the other gauges. So just having a working temperature gauge is important to me. And not having all the lights. I just don't like engine lights. None of our rigs are allowed to have check engine lights. We fix them, and it helps us a lot in understanding exactly what is wrong with the vehicle when they do happen to appear. Anyway, we got a lot of work to do. AccuTune has the coilovers are on their way, and as soon as we get some more time, Kenneth is leading a trail this weekend. I have a couple more dog shows coming up. But you know, we've got a huge event to get ready for too. And I can't wait to tell you about it, but I'm waiting for them to announce it too. So, more to come. We need to get busy working on Penny. So I had slipped off to a dog show. Now I've returned, joining the boys in progress while they are repairing the bump stop. Apparently when this one got torn out on the whoops, damaged the actual place where it screws into. So Kenneth is installing a riv nut to help repair that. And we join them in progress.
Nice tight hole to begin with. Put the tool away. Repairing damaged bump stops on the TJ. On this one, the upper bump stop had actually hogged its way out, had fallen out on the trail, had to be repaired with a nutsert to reaccept the extended TJ bump stop. And this is about as long as the uppers can get because we're starting to see contact with the spring at full droop. On the other side, we had managed to shear the lower bolt and break that one off. So we've had to re-drill, tap, and on the other side actually had to put a nutsert in for the larger bolt on the bottom. Our next step is going to be to lower this down and figure out how far forward the axle needs to come to get the bump stop to center on the bolt. We've got all 4 springs out on the Jeep, so this is something we don't get to do very often, which is to see where it sits on the bump stops. So it's time for Jeep limbo. How low can you go?
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem.
We're at a point, everything is supported, so there really isn't any pressure on these bolts.
Yeah, and if there's no pressure on the bolts, that's good.
Well, with a little luck. Okay.
Cool.
This helps us kind of mark
Which side is which?
which side is which.
And we determine on the other side that it's 10 turns.
Yep.
That's 1, 2, 9, 10. And now it's noteworthy, and you can kind of see it here. This joint is directional on the end of this shank.
Oh.
So it needs, really needs to be in that orientation.
All right. And then we're going to measure. And we got about 3 inches of thread showing.
Which is what Iron Rock has told us is considered to be the safe limit. So now we need to push the axle forward ever so slightly
as we...
to help us get this back into alignment.
Come back a half an inch. Okay, oh, way too much. Way too much.
Need to open the ears up ever so slightly.
Just a little bit. Okay, so coming back just slightly. A little more. Ow! Fingers. Okay, back. Come back.
Okay.
The other back.
Well,
Towards me, back.
oh. Your back, not my back. I'm
Yeah.
with you.
A little more. A little more. Bingo. Close enough. Push.
Yeah, it's bouncing. So it's not under pressure. And that was my point about being able to move the axle back and forth.
Yeah.
Because that made that a whole lot easier than it could have been.
Right. Don't. Yeah.
Whoa! That's what we were trying not to have happen. Yep.
Yeah. You okay?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm fine. You're fine. It's fine. Not put the washer on, just in case. We have a whole lot of caster.
You think?
So because of the nature of the joints on this end, there's no downside to torquing them while it's up in the air. If these were rubber joints, we would want to do this with the vehicle on the ground.
Yep.
So you can see where she's been moved forward an inch, but that means she's now got a ridiculous amount of caster. So next the boys are going to be working on the upper control arms and restoring caster.
1, 2, 3, 9, 10.
Are you getting close?
Yeah. That's not moving in the right direction. I think, stop there.
Okay.
You may need to come back up just a hair on your side. Give it a spin. And this is the fun and games the guys at the alignment shop get to have.
Yeah, and on this one, it's got a grease circ on the end. It's a greasable bolt, so we don't want to hit it with a hammer. That would be bad.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
But you can push on it if you need to.
70 minus 5, 75 minus 5 is 70.
Say why you're laughing.
9 is the number after 8. I've been watching too much Christopher Titus.
Yes.
Good. Well, on this side, that's just about as good as I could ask for, as far as front to back.
So this one is sitting a little forward, but if you look at it from this perspective, it's actually bent a little bit. So, and then the chewed out part is being pushed by the bolt head. But yeah, this one's awfully close too. And yeah, we're probably gonna want to get rid of the sway bar mount, because we're not going to put a sway bar on this. And yeah, as you flex side to side, that's going to hit. So time to come off.
10-4. And so I
Okay.
bet by the time we come up to ride height, it's gonna be darn close.
Yeah.
So one of my tricks in terms of trying to set vehicles up for maximum droop, maximum articulation, is looking at this situation we've got going on here. We're currently sitting hard on the bump stop. When I look back here at my shock, I've still got, another inch and a half of travel left in this shock. I basically can't use this travel. There's no situation with the bump stop and this shock being in line with each other that would ever allow the shock to compress that additional inch and a half. So what this tells me is I actually have room here for a little bit longer shock body, which will give me a shock that has an overall longer stroke. What that will do for this Jeep is that with that longer shock body in here, is it'll actually give us perhaps as much as, certainly another inch just from the additional length of the shock, but perhaps as much as an inch and a half or 2 inches of additional down travel. So that'll give us a little bit more flex. And performance-wise, as you're coming over a rock, and that front tire is starting to reach down, coming over that rock, it allows the tire to reach down about another, inch and a half, 2 inches before it reaches its point of being lifted up off the ground. Just a little bit more travel in that front end to try to squeeze a little bit more performance out of it. The rest of this actually is not looking terrible, although it does highlight an interesting problem. The track, this is the drag link, is making contact with the cylinder assist tube. So that's not a happy thing. I think about what we do with that is rotating the cylinder forward would get that out of contact, I think. Yeah, just rotate the cylinder forward like so. Yeah, problem solved. At least in this particular spot. Again, this moves forward and backward a little bit as the steering cycles from side to side.